So I was minding my own business browsing Twitter in search of the usual top tier political takes and social insight that I'm always keen to see, when I got a notification about something that wasn't the normal fare. One of my viewers, Alex, had messaged me basically saying, dude, you need to check out the post-patch Dark Elves, shit is popping off. Well, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that Dark Elf buffs get me stiffer than Malekith seeing Mommy Morathi stepping out of the shower, so I had to take a look, and oh yeah, that's some good buffing going on right there. The long and short of it is that Dark Elves have had their slave system rebalanced in a number of ways. However, 2 points are far more important than the others. The first is you get more slaves from battles than you did before, and the second is that they've been given the Chaos Dwarf insta-build mechanic, which lets you build structures instantly in return for some slaves. Sounds simple, sounds good. But guys, even at the start, with limited growth and money, this new addition is more than good. It's wonderful and overpowered in the best possible ways. Let's look at turn 1 for Malekith as an example. The first 2 battles are easy auto-resolves, so you just do that and start recruiting Dark Shards. However, if you take the slaves option from the battle and loot and occupy for the settlement, you have enough slaves to immediately take Nagaron to tier 2. Now that's great by itself, but it does something else too. It enables you to start building the Shades building at turn 1. Now that doesn't sound like much. It's only a 3-turn boost after all. But when you're in the early stage of a campaign, the recruitment of your first army is of paramount importance, and this means that you can recruit Shades on turn 3. So after recruiting Dark Shards for 2 turns, you're then recruiting Shades from then on, which gives you a massive buff to the army with which you'll wind up fighting Valkyr the Bloody. And while it's initially expensive, it's actually a long-term cost saving, as it means there'll be fewer units that you need to replace long-term, because Shades are an endgame unit for Druchii. However, the utility for this buff is almost endless. Let's look at another couple of instances in which I've used it just in my early game test with Malekith. In one case, I insta-built the quarry building and used that to reduce the overall cost of taking Nagaron to tier 3, effectively making that quarry building more or less free, as well as reducing all future building costs in the province. Now that's a little boost, but here's something bigger. We have a rebellion going on here at Nagaron, and Malekith's away trying to take out Valkyr the Bloody good and early. What I did was I used slaves to insta-boost the capital up to tier 3, which then bolsters the garrison. And then I fought another battle which gave me enough extra money and slaves to insta-build the garrison building too. This means that in one turn I was able to add several units, plus more defensive supplies to my capital's garrison. This can mean the difference between having to send an army back to defend a location or recruit a new lord and use your regiments of renown. Plus, of course, these are permanent improvements rather than a temporary army, so they benefit you across the board for the length of your campaign. And let's look at the potential for minor settlements in a similar situation. With enough growth, slaves and money, you can take a threatened garrison from a field battle that you can't win to a minor settlement siege with a better garrison, choke points and defensive structures that mean that you will win. It's so powerful. There are basically 3 limitations to balance this out. Growth, money, and of course, slaves. Well, growth is the main one there because you can't really raise it through battles like the other 2. But oh, there's the Diktat system for Dark Elves, which means that you can trigger that in a province for a massive temporary growth boost by spending some slaves. And while the Chaos Dwarfs can do this too, because Dark Elves draw from a central pool of slaves rather than having a settlement movement system, they don't have to spend gold moving slaves around from province to province to use this buff in certain locations. On top of that, Dark Elves have something that the Chaos Dwarfs cannot even remotely replicate, which helps them deal with the money and slave limitations too. Something far better than the Dowager trade caravans. I'm talking about Black Arcs. These are basically floating loot machines. Just load them up with cheap Dark Shard or Shade armies with massive reductions in upkeep costs, ship out to somewhere like Norsca where the armies stack up very poorly against that kind of armor-piercing range, and just tour around, looting their coastal settlements. Because of the cost reductions on armies on Black Arcs, plus their relative power and flexibility, you can just constantly feed the pool of slaves and money to pay for constant insta-building and boosting. Think of it in places like Grond, which is the best place to recruit spellcasters from for the Dark Elves. When you capture it, with enough slaves available, you can get this place boosted to top tier extremely quickly, and then start recruiting those high-level witches. Same goes for every settlement that has unique and beneficial buildings for your faction, like the ancient city of Quintex, for example. There's so much potential here, and there's a case to be made that it's even better than the old slave system from Warhammer 2, albeit with some extra steps and a little more provincial micromanagement. It incentivizes people to play Dark Elves like Dark Elves, cruel raiders who maraud across the seas capturing slaves to enhance themselves and their wealth. It's a brilliant addition from CA that makes the Dark Elves more fun and, in my opinion, easily the most powerful faction now in Immortal Empires. But what do you think? Do you like the new mechanics? Do you hate them? How are you using them? And how powerful do you think the Dark Elves are now compared to other factions? Give your opinions down in the comments section, and while you're down there, hit like, hit subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.